you take growth hormone, the growth effect of it is initiated not through the GH you're taking, but through the IGF-1 that's released from your liver. So you can only produce so much IGF-1, and that's very genetic. So maybe if I take a shot of 2 IUs of GH, I might release X amount of IGF-1 from my liver. Kevin Levrone might take 2 IUs of GH, and he might produce X plus 10 IGF from his liver because he just has a better IGF release genetically than I do. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo every week right here on RX Muscle, taking your questions, bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, whatever is on your mind, be it diet, be it training, be it supplementation. Of course, we are now in the thick of the IFBB Pro schedule this past weekend. Of course, the Detroit Pro, which saw Martin Fitzwater clinching his ticket to the Olympia, and a lot more to come over the course of the next few weeks. Before we go to the questions on this show, we're going to go. Dave has a sale right now on kidney stuff, a very popular item that you go to DavePalumbo.com to purchase. Dave, you want to tell the fans a little bit more about the sale for kidney stuff?
Yeah, we're doing $10 off a bag, which is a really significant savings for people because we have some short dated product we have to move. It doesn't expire till the end of May. The stuff doesn't really go bad anyway, but so you still have a good amount of time to use the stuff after you buy it as well. And we are gonna, like I said, we very rarely discount it because we don't make this stuff. We buy it and I sell it. Another company makes a golden standard because I really believe in the product, and the product has been proven, at least in a lot of people that I've used, that anyone with high creatinine levels, when you take this product, it lowers the creatinine. And what it does is it reduces the inflammation around the kidney tubules significantly, and opens up the tubules and allows the blood to be filtered better. So if you're having some kidney issues or you're running some high creatinine levels, it's a good idea to use this. I usually tell people to use it once or twice a year anyway. Just do one bag of it, like a month, for a month's supply. Maybe do either 2 in a row, or I'll do a bag every 3rd month. Usually I do, but even if you did one bag every 6 months, it just gives your kidneys a little break, and it really allows them to kind of heal up a little bit. A lot of people have gotten some excellent results. People with super high creatinine have brought theirs down, and that's why I sell the product, because it does work really well. And like I said, if you want to take advantage, if you use the product a lot and you want to stock up on it, the product is available. $10 off a bag. It's only $37. It's DavePalumbo.com. You have to buy that at. So check it out. Thank you.
So again, that's still right now at DavePalumbo.com. Let's go to the questions. The first 2 questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Why do you need a cheat meal once a week in a low-carb diet? I'm getting ready for my first show, and I'm 6 weeks out. I know you did a video maybe a couple of years ago. You explained the whole science behind a cheat meal, but this one, a cheat meal once a week in a low-carb diet.
Yeah, it's funny because you don't necessarily need to do it. I like the term cheat meal. It makes people very happy. Like when I tell my clients they have a cheat meal, as opposed to me just telling them what to eat once a week that has a little bit more carbs. Cheat meal sounds like, oh, I'm getting away with something. So we call it a cheat meal. Some people call it a refeed meal. To me, refeed is just not very romantic. So I like the word cheat meal. But here, the science behind it is if you're eating a very low carb diet, what happens is the body is producing very low insulin levels, which is good when you're trying to diet, right? Because you don't want a lot of insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. So if insulin levels are low, you burn more fat just by nature. That's why low carb diets work so well. Problem is that your thyroid gland produces a hormone known as T4 or thyroxine. Thyroxine T4 gets converted to the active form of T3, which is known as triiodothyronine. So we want that conversion process to be efficiently working all the time. When insulin levels are low for extended periods of time, T4 to T3 conversion slows down. And the body, what it does is it knows if insulin is low, there's less food coming in more than likely. Therefore, let's slow down the metabolism a little bit. And we don't want that to happen. So once a week, it's a good idea if you throw a cheat meal in there, something with carbs in it, and you spike insulin levels, that restores T4 to T3 conversion, and keeps it going for another. You probably can do a cheat meal every 2 weeks and get the same effect, but it's nice to have one once a week. Now, the question is, how much do you need to spike insulin? Not as much as you may think. Sometimes in people who do too much damage on a cheat meal, or guys and women that are too close to a contest, instead of giving them like a sloppy cheat meal, I might just boost carbs for one day. So I might say, you know what, instead of having one meal where you're going to eat whatever you want, you're going to have 35 or 40 grams of carbs, for 3 to 6 meals a day, depending on who the person is. And we'll spike insulin for one day a week. And then those clean carbs are just going to get stored as glycogen. They're really not going to sabotage your weight loss, but they're going to keep the T4 to T3 conversion working the way we want. So it's the carbohydrates, the insulin release, that actually stimulates that T4 to T3 conversion, and that's what we're looking for. And so once again, it doesn't have to be extreme, but it's nice if you're dieting super hard during the week to get that one meal where you can kind of eat the things that you enjoy eating.
Second question, again, these first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. What do you suggest for women, or a protocol for women to become pregnant when it's difficult to conceive?
Yeah, it's. I want to just tell people, first of all, I've sent out an enormous amount of pregnancy protocols, or baby making protocols, as I call them, for the men to use, and so many people have gotten back to me with success stories. I've seen people at the Olympia and the Arnold who've come up to me and showed me the kids that they've had with the protocol. So I'm very happy that everyone's getting such good results. The truth of the matter is that 99% of the time, the problem is the man, especially if you're a bodybuilder and you're on steroids, okay? Because you're suppressing your sperm production, and that's now if you have good sperm production and your sperm is swimming and their morphology is good because you followed all the tenets of this baby making protocol that I'm giving out for free to everyone, then and the doctor determines it's not the man's issue, it's the woman's problem because she has something going on that's not right, that's a different story, okay? Women taking this protocol is not a good idea. Okay, because it's going to mess up your cycle, and it could cause multiple births. It could cause you to ovulate more than one egg, causing triplets or quadruplets or worse. The problem with that is it's dangerous, because when you have multiple birth babies, they usually do not go to term. They have to be taken out by C-section early, and when babies are taken out early, they're not developed fully, and then they have to go in the NIC unit, and they have to be treated appropriately. So it's not a good idea to have multiple births. Look, sometimes people have twins or triplets just because that runs in their family. Different story. We don't want to cause that to happen. So I do not recommend using any of these protocols on women. Okay. If there is an issue with a woman, she's not ovulating properly, or there's something wrong with her ovaries, that's something that a specialist, a fertility specialist would deal with. And I wouldn't just arbitrarily start giving her these medications that we're giving the man and hoping that it's going to fix the woman. It probably won't. It probably will make things worse. These two questions, very good questions, by the way, coming from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. It's an app I offer for $29 a month. You join, you get access to all my writings, all my videos I've ever done in one place. We do a Q&A video, technically an Ask Dave, every week just for the app members. So we have a separate one for the app members. I answer everyone's questions in the app in an open forum, so everyone sees everyone's questions and everyone's answers. That's done daily. And we put up a workout every single week. So it's a really good resource. We have a ton of members. It's constantly growing. I want to thank you for your support. I'm glad that everyone's really enjoying learning. It's a constantly evolving type of learning experience. And it's nice to have Dave Palumbo as your coach in your back pocket.
Let's go to our Facebook and Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us on Facebook, just search in RX Muscle in the search bar. On Instagram, official_RX Muscle. Frankie, Arizona. My A1C is getting on the high side. Diabetes 2 runs in the family. I'm 53 years old, 5'10", 195 pounds. Have lived a healthy bodybuilding lifestyle for decades. Any suggestions on a max daily amount of carbs to lower my level a little, yet keep some size?
You know, I struggle with this question a lot because I struggled with it myself because I started running slightly high fasting blood sugars. I was creeping into the 90s, and I didn't like that because I know that over time, having fasting blood sugars over 90 is going to lead to accumulation damage, is what I call it. The glucose depositing itself in the small capillaries of the brain, the eyes, the hands, the feet, and that causes diabetic side effects. I don't want that. So I started cutting back my carbs a lot, and I was controlling my blood sugars well that way. But I was hungry all the time, and I don't have any body fat on my body anyway. So I'm like, why am I having to suffer? Restricting carbs. I can eat carbs and I can metabolize them. So I decided to start using. Through a doctor, I got him to prescribe a long-acting insulin for me. I like Tresiba the best, but Tujea was also another once a day, long-acting, or as we call it, basal insulin. And I take 30 units at night, once a day, and it keeps my blood sugars. I wake up in the 80s all the time, sometimes even in the high 70s. My A1C went way down. It never was in the dangerous zone, but it's down to 5, 5.1, 5.2. That's really good. And it's equivalent to taking testosterone replacement only for your blood sugar control. You're taking a long-acting insulin like you would take a long-acting testosterone. You're taking the burden off the pancreas, the beta cells of the pancreas. They don't have to produce as much because as we get older, the pancreas gets sluggish. It doesn't produce as much beta. The beta cells don't produce as much insulin, and they need help sometimes. So, and I've done this in other videos. I've explained why bodybuilders really are not insulin resistant, because we exercise, we eat fish, we take fish oil. So we do everything to make ourselves insulin sensitive. So we're not insulin resistant. We just don't produce enough insulin because we eat 5-6 times a day. And as we get older, our pancreas can't keep up. So I take a supplemental form of it. To answer the question, can you cut back your carbs and control your blood sugars a little bit? Yeah, but if type 2 diabetes runs in your family, it means that as you get older, your genetics dictate that your pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin. And the best way to fix that, especially if you're going to continue eating like a bodybuilder and training your whole life, is going to be to take a long-acting insulin. If you can convince your doctor to write a prescription where your insurance is going to cover it, like mine does, for a long-acting insulin, for Tujea or Tresiba, that's great. If you can't, you can go to Walmart. Walmart sells Novolin N. That's a long-acting insulin. Problem with that is you have to take it twice a day because it's not a true 24-hour insulin. And you have to titrate your dose up, starting low and working and figuring out what the ideal dose is. That's something I can do if people want to hire me, whatever, to help them with their insulin. But the point is that there's no reason to suffer and not be able to eat, okay, especially if you're eating healthy, just because genetically you don't produce enough insulin. Take a supplement, just like you would for testosterone. If your testosterone's low and you only have a 200 testosterone, you're going to take a shot once a week and you're going to bring it up to 800 and you're going to feel great. Same thing with the insulin.
Second question, we go to one of your favorite topics, and it's from Mike Molinaro, blasting and cruising. So in regards to a blast and cruise, do bodybuilders or a layperson utilize that method with HGH? Can someone go up and dose for a while, then take it down to 2 to 4 IUs, or should you come off completely for a while? I understand that the effects of HGH take a lot longer than anabolics.
I'll give you my standard answer to this question, which I've basically been saying since the late 90s. Because I started using GH, I think it was maybe even 94, 95, somewhere around there. And after using it for 5 years, I kind of figured out how it works best. It works best when you take it every day at a smaller dose, meaning that frequent dosing, but less, seems to cause less side effects and better growth over the long run. Okay, whereas some people take large amounts for shorter periods of time, they go off it, and then they do it again. I don't feel that that's the best way, because the problem is that when you take growth hormone, the growth effect of it is initiated not through the GH you're taking, but through the IGF-1 that's released from your liver. So you can only produce so much IGF-1, and that's very genetic. So maybe if I take a shot of 2 IUs of GH, I might release X amount of IGF-1 from my liver. Kevin Levrone might take 2 IUs of GH, and he might produce X plus 10 IGF from his liver, because he just has a better IGF release genetically than I do. So likewise, you hit a certain point of GH that your liver just can't produce anymore. So you keep taking more and more and more GH, thinking I'm going to grow better. But what's happening is your liver just can't produce anymore. So you're stuck at a certain amount, yet you're just taking more and more GH. And so what you're doing is you're causing more side effects. You're causing more insulin resistance because your GH dose is higher. You're causing more bloating and fluid retention, because that's what GH does. You're causing numbness in your fingers and feet and stuff like that. You might cause some your teeth, your wisdom teeth to move a little bit. So the problem is you just get more side effects. You're wasting the money essentially. So for me, I found that 2 to 4 IUs is ideal. If you want to really go on the higher dose, 4 to 5 IUs max per day. I would recommend, if you have the money to do it and you can get pharmaceutical GH, 3 to 4 IUs is ideal per day, and just stay on it every day. And you can take it year round if you want, as long as you're monitoring your blood sugar, you're not running high fasting sugars. And if you are, you got to just take a long acting insulin to counteract that. But assuming you're keeping track of your blood sugars and everything's working well, there's nothing else negative about the GH that you're taking, especially in the dosage. In that 3 to 4 IU range, you're really not going to get any side effects. You're not going to be excessively bloated. You're not going to have too much insulin resistance from it. And if you do, you can adjust that with the insulin, the long-acting insulin. To me, that's the best way to take it. I see guys taking 8, 10, 12 IUs a day. All they're getting is side effects from that. They're just getting super bloated. Their blood sugars are off the charts. And most people who can afford to take that much are using generic GHs that aren't even dosed right. So they think they're taking 12 IUs and they're only taking like 3 or 4. So my suggestion is, if you have real GH, 3 to 4 IUs is ideal.
Let's go to Andrew Apuzzo. If I use EAA supplements, would I count that towards my daily protein consumption?
I wouldn't count it towards the daily consumption. What I would do, what I would say is, if you're dieting for a competition, I would not use excessive amounts of branched-chain amino acids or essential amino acids. I wouldn't even say, oh, well, if I'm taking 8 grams here, I'll just adjust my protein. No, it's not a complete protein. Figure out how much protein you need for your diet and eat that in your diet. You don't need branched chains and EAAs while you're dieting for a competition, because what happens is, most people drink it while they're training and something like that, your body winds up using it as energy. Those amino acids turn into glucose really easily via gluconeogenesis. So your body likes to, would rather use those for energy than have to dig into stored body fat. Okay, so my suggestion is, while dieting, chill on the amino acid supplements, unless you have a freaky metabolism, you can get away with it, But a lot of guys sabotage weight loss because they're doing too many amino acids. They drink it all day long, like it's like they're drinking water, and the body can utilize those amino acids. Now, the thing that tricks people is they pick up the thing of amino acids and it says 0 calories on it. It's not true. If you have 1,000 milligrams of amino acids, that's 1 gram of protein. That's 4 calories. All right. So you start adding those up, it's energy you're taking, an extra energy. Now, if you're off season, different story. Off season, drink as many as you want. I drink the stuff all day long, just because I prefer to drink that than sugary compounds. And I think I might as well get some extra amino acids in. But when you're in a contest prep scenario, you don't want extra calories. There's no free meals. Your body will use that stuff for energy otherwise.
Let's go to Jackson Tippett. Does clen need to be cycled 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off to keep the receptors fresh, or is that a myth?
Well, if you go off the clenbuterol, yes, you're going to refresh your receptors. The problem is that while you're going off it for 2 weeks, you're going to lose all the improvements, all the fat loss you got you can get a rebound off of that. So you're going up and down and up and down and up and down, and you're not really going anywhere. So same thing with steroids. When you first take steroids, the first 4 weeks, they work the best. because the androgen receptors are so sensitive. Then the androgen receptors downregulate a little bit. The steroids still work. They just don't work as well as they did the first couple of weeks. The clenbuterol is still working. It's just not working at the maximum effect that it had because your beta receptors have downregulated a little bit. They're still there. So I do not recommend doing 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I recommend taking it every day. You know, if you're going to do 12 weeks, 16 weeks before a show, just keep slowly increasing the dosage so that you keep getting the fat burning that you want. You know, I start usually with 20 micrograms twice a day, and I'll increase that by every 1 to 3 weeks. I'll increase it by 20 micrograms. So I might go to 20 micrograms 3 times a day after 2 weeks. And then depending on how the person is losing weight, if they're losing, then I don't increase it at all. If they get stuck and I want to use that to push past the plateau, I'll bump the dosage up a little bit. And so that's the right way to really use it. The 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off was originally originated by Bill Phillips when it first came out, and it just seemed like it made sense. The problem is, and any one of you guys have done it, is that on the 2 weeks that you go off, you seem to lose all the improvements that you made on the 2 weeks you were on. So at that point, it's useless.
Alexander Ruin, coach, off season, on days when you don't have an appetite, mostly off days, would lowering the carbs a bit with more fats do the trick?
Anytime you lower carbs, it's going to increase your appetite a little bit because your body thinks, oh my God, I'm dieting. But sometimes, you know, you lower the carbs and, you know, you don't have enough fuel, you know, and then that could sometimes make your body start using the protein and fat you're eating for fuel. And then you don't have enough of that around to build and repair muscle. So it's weird because, you know, and I've said this before, the amount of food you need in your diet to actually put on lean muscle is so much greater than the amount of food you need to just maintain muscle. And the amount of food you need to lose body fat is so much less than the amount of food you need to just maintain muscle. It's so weird. So there's these two extremes. You think, how can I need this much food to grow and this little food to lose? It almost doesn't make sense, but it makes perfect sense when you think about it. Your body wants to stay at equilibrium. It doesn't want to lose or gain. So if you want to gain, you have to eat a lot more food. If you want to lose, you got to eat a lot less food. And that's just the way the body works. You know, some people have insane metabolisms and they could, you know, those rules don't apply to them. But for the 95% of the people out there, those rules apply. And that's just the way it works. So
let's go to, you're going to love the name, Raw Muscle Glutes. And to no surprise, the question is about glutes. What exercise do you think is best to increase the gripping and squeezing power of the buttocks and glutes?
What a question, right? Look, the squat is the king of the glute builders, okay? But you have to have a wide stance, okay, when you're doing squats. So if you have a narrow stance with squats, your knees go forward when you lower the weight, right? Because your legs are touching almost. They're too close together. And you're going to target mostly quad and you know, some hamstring in there. When you open your stance up and when you lower your body, you're able to actually flail your knees outward when you come down. You can go down lower. You can engage the adductors, which are your inner thighs, and you can engage the glutes tremendously on the way up. Deadlifts also. Deadlifts is really the bottom part of the squat movement, if you think about it. You're driving the weight off the floor and you're pulling from the glutes. It's the glutes are the biggest muscle in the body, you know. So, but you got to be able to engage them. If you can't engage them, then you're not really using them. I see people do deadlifts, squats, leg press. They don't even use their glutes. How do they do that? Well, they're doing narrow stance. With deadlifts, they're leaning over too much. They're not really squatting down. Open your legs up. I always open my legs up because you can get the weight down further and you can get a much greater range of motion. When your legs are closer, the range of motion is restricted. And so you're not going to get the engagement of the glutes as much. And you know what? I see women doing those hip thrust machine, the kick back stuff. Do you feel your glutes do that? Yeah, but you can't use a lot of weight on those things. And they're not. Squats and deadlifts are major glute movers. I mean, the glutes are completely, you know, doing so much of the work that there's nothing that can mimic that or emulate that. Now, if you have good glutes already, you can do pretty much anything to maintain them. But I'm talking about building glutes to begin with. Wide stance squats, wider stance, not sumo, but wider stance deadlifts. Those are going to really engage those glutes tremendously.
Question from Britley Lee. How common are immune system responses to peptides. For example, extreme fatigue, body aches, low-grade fever for 2-3 days.
You don't really see that. I haven't really noticed that with too many peptides. Some peptides cause you to get nauseous, like some of the melanotide peptides, the ones that that you use to get tan, the ones that you can use for sometimes increasing sex drive, like the PT141. Sometimes people get a little nauseous from that. Some of the GH releasing peptides will make you really hungry. Nausea, flu-like symptoms, that's more of like a steroid flu, we call it. That's like from test propionate. Testosterone propionate is, I could tell without even testing the stuff with the, I sell those Roy test kits that test all the drugs, very accurate testing. We sell them on DavePalumbo.com all day long. But when people come and tell me, Dave, I'm taking Primobolan and I'm getting fevers and soreness at the injection site, I said, I would bet my bank account on the fact that you're taking test propionate, because that's a typical reaction. Now, some people get a little bit of test flu when they first start a cycle because they start out at a very high dosage and it just overwhelms the body. It's too much. The body's not used to it. That could also happen. When you get those symptoms, by the way, you could take 2 Tylenol and it'll go away instantly. That's a really good way to get rid of it because it reduces because Tylenol inhibits the production of those prostaglandins that cause that nausea and that terrible feeling, feverish feeling. So usually peptides are not going to cause that. Usually you get that from steroids.
I'll save this one towards the end. JJ Hepner, why does Winstrol come in a water base instead of oil, and how long will it stay good after I start using it?
Yeah, they actually have oil-based Winstrol now. I don't know for what reason, but Winstrol is basically an oral compound, okay? What they realized was if you pulverize it into a fine powder, or you get the pure Winstrol powder before it's even smushed together with binders for a pill, you can put it into a water solution and shake it up and create what they call a suspension. So it's the same compound. That's why you can actually drink Winstrol injectable and still get the same results. The advantage of injecting Winstrol, however, is that it avoids the first pass through the liver. So it tends to stay a little more potent a little bit longer in the body. So, but a lot of people don't like to inject because it hurts, because you're basically injecting, dusty fine particles into your wherever you're injecting, whatever muscle you're injecting into. So I can understand why that might be a little bit of an irritant. But a lot of people just take the Winstrol pills. Once again, we took Winstrol injectable back in the day when I was competing, because they actually made for humans. They had Winstrol V, which was for veterinary, animals, but they had an actual Zambon made a Winstrol injectable that was buffered so it didn't hurt when you injected it. And they were really, they were pretty cheap if you bought them from the pharmacy in Barcelona, but they were single amps. So we would take like an amp every other day, usually 3 amps a week prior to a contest. And those worked really, really well. You can't do that with every drug because every drug is not available like that. Isn't something you can inject. Testosterone suspension was like that too. They would take pure test powder that had no whatchamacallit, like no enanthate or cypionate or propionate ester bound to it, and so it was unesterified. And they would put that in water and they would create suspension, but that would only last like 8 hours in your body, if it even lasted that long. So I'm not a big fan of that, of the test suspension. I like the Winstrol injectable because I thought it made it a little less toxic and it seemed to work a little better. But you can take Winstrol orally and it's the same exact drug.
Bilal Hamide, would you consider doing mini cuts in between cycles for mass that the person is over 15% or abs are no longer showing? Or would you rather just a full bulk, regardless if abs are showing or not?
Yeah, it's really up to the person. If the person's not super sloppy, I'll put them on an off-season scenario. I've put people on off-season, muscle building diets, and they were kind of overweight, but I kind of gave them a little cardio and, watched how many grams of carbs I was feeding them. So you can get someone growing, okay, without giving them an excessive amount of food, especially if they have some body fat on them. If I get people who come to me, they're like, I don't know what I should do. I really want to put muscle on, but I'm really, really out of shape. In that case, I tell them usually, let's just diet you for a little bit, because more than likely you'll add muscle anyway because you haven't been working out at all. let's diet some of this fat off, and you'll make some improvements. And then when you get your body fat down to a reasonable level, we can increase your food a little bit and cut back the cardio and then do a little muscle building, because you don't want to turn the person into a big fat slob. You know what I mean? So it really depends on what the person looks like. Most of the time they're reasonable, and I can bulk them up a little bit, without getting them too fat. If you have abs, obviously that's great to start with. That's a nice starting point. And most people come off a contest prep, and that's when they're starting their off-season diet. So those people are usually pretty lean to start out with anyway. So it really depends on it's a person-by-person type of situation.
We do have this discussion seemingly every few months, and that is about guys from the 90s and 2000s versus guys from today in terms of their ability or inability to get in shape. The coaches now, I guess this is a different angle to the conversation. The coaches now are the guys from that era. Does that mean the coaches aren't what they used to be and guys are wasting their money on current coaches?
No, I look, I think coaches try to cater to whatever the judges are looking for at that time, whatever the look happens to be. When I train someone for a bodybuilding show, I try to get them as shredded as possible. That's because I always think conditioning wins shows. I'm still a big believer in that. And I don't think people who are super conditioned are going to lose just because, maybe they don't have the fullness of another guy who's softer than them. Now, if it comes down to a contest where everyone's about the same conditioning level and one guy happens to be a little rounder or fuller, that guy's winning because he's just got better genetics. So I hate to say it, but you know what? Conditioning wins shows, man. Everyone should come in shredded. And I think sometimes people fall victim to the latest trends and they'll try to, go in that direction. And sometimes it works, right? Because the lineup maybe is not that stacked. And then other times you see some guy come out of the woodwork and you're like, how did this guy win the show? Well, he was the most shredded guy on that stage, so he won. So I think you always have to play to your strengths. I always tell people, never come in at anything less than your best. Never just, I'm going to use this show as a warm-up, so I'm not going to be 100%. That's BS. Every show you step on stage, you should be 100%, or don't do the show. Because if you show the judges anything less than your best, you're asking for them to mark you down. Okay. The problem is that sometimes people win shows and they're not at their best, and that sends the wrong message to that person. They think, this is good enough for me to win. Why do I need to diet any harder than this? So, but we see shows where there's been some spectacular conditioning on stage. I mean, the Olympia was decided on conditioning. Hottie is usually the hardest one on stage. Derek brought the best conditioning, and he won the Olympia because of that. So I still stick by my, get in the best shape of your life. And it's not always the coach's fault either. Let's just make that statement also. If a person's not listening to the coach 100%, you can't blame the coach, but yet the coach gets blamed anyway. So the coach is not living with the person and seeing everything that goes into the person's mouth, how they're training, how they're doing cardio. So there is a responsibility of the person who's actually competing in the show to follow the protocol. So I think the coaches are just as good now as they were 10 years ago, probably better. I think the competitors, muscle size wise and quality are better now. I think that some people just have to get into that mindset that I need to come in like Dorian did. I need to be the most lean guy on stage because that's what these judges want.
I didn't get this question last week, and I'm not sure if I asked it before, but it's from a VIP Lot Takur. Is GH really necessary on a contest prep for good results, or the contest prep, can it be done without GH only on gear? So I don't know if he's saying, I guess, he says gear with good results. So I'm not sure if he means like a cycle or supplements without GH. Your thoughts on doing a contest prep without GH?
Look, I can diet people naturally. Okay. But is GH going to make you look better? Yeah, it will. So when you're asking me, can it be done without GH? I say to you, can you afford to do the GH? And you tell me no, because I got to pay my mortgage and I got to pay my kids' school bills and I got to buy food. Then I say, then don't waste your money on GH. But if you're going to ask me, is GH going to make your body look better? Of course it is. Of course it is. Growth hormone and steroids work really, really well together. It doesn't mean you have to take 6 IUs of GH a day. You can take 2 IUs of GH and get really good results too. So if you're competing at the highest level, okay, and you could afford it and swing it, I recommend, yes, GH will definitely make you look better. You'll be bigger, you'll be harder, and you'll have a better look, okay? But that doesn't mean you have to use, like I said, 6-8 IUs a day. You can use a little bit and still get better results and get very good results from it. So I think that's, but see, people in their mind think if I can't use as much as, this guy does, then I shouldn't use it at all. No, it's not all or none. Back in the 90s, and guys only used 2 to 4 IUs a day. They didn't even think about using more than that. First of all, it was super expensive. And secondly, no one thought that you would even think to do that much, okay? Because it wasn't that available. And guys got really good results from it. I think people just use too much GH these days. I really do. I think that there's too much an overemphasis on it. And then people think, well, if I can't do all that this guy does, Mr. Olympia uses, I got to cut it back. I shouldn't do it at all. No, there's a in between, a sweet spot you got to find for yourself. And does it help? 100%. Do you need to use maximum doses? No. Will you get benefits from doing 2 to 4 IUs a day? Absolutely.
Alan Finch brings something. I'm not sure if you've discussed it on other formats. I don't remember us discussing this on this show. Activated charcoal. Your thoughts on activated charcoal as part of a supplement regimen?
Yeah, I'm not really a big advocate on it. Activated charcoal basically binds up all the nutritional supplements and all the stuff you take and basically just makes it non-absorbable. They give you activated charcoal when you ingest poison because it binds things and pulls it out of the body without the body absorbing it. So I don't know why you would want to use activated charcoal if unless, like I said, you consume something that you thought was poisonous to yourself or not good for yourself. So no, I don't see it as a regular part of any regimen.
Buckshot Strength, old school question for you. What was your best running time? Says he's been a fan since the MD days, species user for 10 years now. So appreciate the support.
Well, I ran several different races, but I guess for you runners out there, you might know times. I did my best 5K time, which is 3.1 miles. It's 5 kilometers. Was 15:29. My best, which is very good that's winning races in like a Division III college, not winning any races in Division I. My best mile time. What was my best mile time? It was like 4:31, I think it was, which is good. But then again, the guys who are in the Olympics are going well under 4 minutes, so I would have gotten smoked by those guys. But that was a very good time for Division III in college. And I don't remember. I'm trying to think what my I don't remember any other time, my 5 mile time. I don't remember what that was. And cross country is different because you're running on different hills and stuff like that. So it's really not giving you time is not really an accurate thing. Oh, my best 10K time. What was my best 10K time? I can't remember. I don't remember. But 5K was 15:29, and then my mile time was 4:31, which I thought was pretty good. So I was a good, and that's without any anabolic steroids. I didn't even know about anabolic steroids. I always wonder how fast I would have run if I would have been on, taking something, enhancing myself. But that was 100% natural. So.
Wait, did they test you back in the day, like for college events?
No, but I didn't even know about steroids. I didn't even know that people even took steroids. And thinking back, there were definitely guys on my team that were using them because I remember they would go from their times would be really crappy, and then they obviously start taking them, and by the end of the season, they were running like insane times. So, yeah. I don't think Division III they were so big. Division I, it was probably a lot more used because I think the coaches encouraged it probably because those are the guys that went to the Olympics and stuff like that. You know what? There was a kid in high school, not my high school, that was winning all the cross country races in the state. And we would sometimes go up to run races when I was in high school up to like Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx. And this kid ran 14 minutes and 20 seconds. He beat the nearest guy by like a minute. A minute in a 3.1 mile race is like an eternity. That's how good this guy was compared to the rest of the high school guys. Everyone else was in the 15-minute range, like 15:02, and that's spectacular in high school. Even I couldn't run that in high school. So there are just some guys that are genetic freaks who are runners. Those are the guys who go on to the Division I schools who become Olympic champions. Okay. Running is very genetic. I used to bust my ass. I'd run 10 miles a day, and I did everything I could. And I was very elite in terms of if I ran a road race, in my local town, no one was beating me. But, you take it to that next level where you're talking about the best in the world. I was like a joke compared to those guys. So just goes to show you that in every sport, the elite genetic freaks rise to the top.
We'll take one more question on the show. It's from Atleta Bolivera. Do you believe that Dennis Newman or Mike François could have beaten Dorian Yates in the 90s if they didn't have any issues or problems?
No. I'll tell you why. Because Flex Wheeler couldn't beat Dorian Yates. If Flex Wheeler and Kevin Levrone couldn't beat them, those two guys were not even close to Kevin Levrone and Flex Wheeler. Even though Mike did beat Flex Wheeler at the Arnold Classic one year because Flex had that auto accident and he was making a comeback. But I don't think anyone was going to beat Dorian at his best. Like I said, it would have been interesting to see if Ronnie and Dorian would have been on the same stage in that 98 Olympia, what would have happened? Dorian thinks he would have beat him. I don't think he would have beat him, but that would have been some battle if we could have seen that. I would have loved that one.
And that's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Thank you for watching. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our shows, upcoming segments. Right now on the channel, all new episode of yesterday's After Hours. Dave did this elongated rant about Planet Fitness and why bodybuilders and women, quite frankly, should not be going there, should not be supporting them. And if you have a membership, why you should be canceling immediately and never setting foot in Planet Fitness again. That right now on the channel, I will drop the link right above me. I don't know which side it's going to be on, but whatever. And of course, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio with Chris Aceto and the recap of this past weekend's Detroit Pro. I was going to see Arnold Brazil. Detroit Pro, again, which saw Martin Fitzwater winning the show and clinching his ticket to the 2024 Olympia. Again, subscribe below. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below, and as always, we appreciate all of your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.